Welcome to Concrete Conversations, the Indian real estate podcast. During the last decade, one of the fastest growing subsectors within Indian real estate has been Proptech, as an increasing number of real estate transactions have been happening online. This surge is also reflected in the investor market, with a total of $4 billion in funding being poured into Indian Proptech ventures since 2009. However, no progress comes without its fair share of challenges. One such challenge being the disparity of information and transparency between the supply side, traditionally developers and brokers, and the demand side, traditionally real estate buyers, tenants, and investors. To talk to us about his PropTech solution to address this challenge, amongst others, we have with us today the CBO and co-founder of India's first PropTech Unicorn, NoBroker, Mr. Saurabh Garg. With a history of successful entrepreneurship with his first venture, the Four Fountains Spa, Mr. Garg decided to start NoBroker in 2014 to address the pain points that he had personally faced as a prospective tenant. Today, NoBroker has become a full-stack service provider with an array of property services catering to them achieving a company value of over $1 billion in their most recent funding round. Mr. Garg takes us through his journey with NoBroker, their expansion into complementary verticals, and the application of data and algorithms to understand consumer behavior and improve the consumer experience within real estate. So without further ado, let's get started. Saurabh, welcome to Concrete Conversations. Good morning to you and thank you for joining us. How is your morning going so far? I know it's an early morning for you in Bombay right now.
Good morning. Well, things are good. I'm in Bangalore though, but
Oh,
but
okay.
it's good. I think the weather is also good. Yeah.
Right. Good. Glad to hear that. We typically start off our conversations by getting to know our guests a little better. So we'd love to start off by learning a little bit about your journey, your career, and how you got to where you are today.
I come from a middle class family. My father is an engineer. My mother is a doctor. I studied at IIT Bombay. Did my chemical engineering. Don't know anything about chemical engineering, so I did an MBA after that. I went to IIM Ahmedabad, did my
Right.
MBA. Started my career with Unilever. Worked there for 3 years in sales and marketing, which was actually a very good place for me to learn about both brands and leadership because you get to handle a large team at a very young age and you also handle large brands. So that was a very good experience for me. After that, I
Right.
started my first company, which was India's largest chain of spas called Four Fountains. I
Right.
ran it till 2014, which is when I started NoBroker. So NoBroker basically started from, from my personal experience of dealing with brokers. So when I
Okay.
used to work at Unilever, that was a time when Unilever used to provide me a house to live in. I had a beautiful house in Bandra West. Everything was set, but
Right.
the saddest part of leaving the job was that I had to also leave that house. And and that was the first time I came across a broker because till that time I was living at my parents' house, then I was living in a hostel at IIT, a dorm at IIM
Mm,
Ahmedabad,
mm, mm.
and and then when I quit the job, I had to figure out how to find a home, and I tried many platforms that existed that time to find a house without a broker, without paying huge brokerage, but failed miserably at that. I
Yeah.
tried for almost 2 months, and found that there were only three owners who were listed on the all the platforms combined,
Right.
and those houses were pathetic. They were there because nobody was taking them. So finally, I had to start working with a broker, and I realized it's such a bad experience because the broker showed me the worst houses first,
Mm.
which no one will take. And when I
Okay.
got angry and said, "Boss, I'm not going to take any of these," then he started showing me slightly better houses and pushed me a lot. Whenever he found some house which I kind of said looks okay, he wanted me to close it, immediately.
Right.
And
Right.
there was a lot of information asymmetry. You know, he tried to tell me things which didn't exist and all that. Uh, and
Yeah.
then when I finally took that house, I paid. I think in 2007 I paid some 45,000 rupees as brokerage, which is a huge
Oh.
amount of money for a person who was unemployed. who didn't have a job.
Yeah.
So it hurt really bad. And what happened that I took that house, and then I was renewing that house after 11 months with the same landlord, uh, and the broker came back and he demanded the brokerage again for doing exactly nothing. So
Right.
I asked him that, what is this? I mean, I'm renting with the same landlord. We know each other. We'll get the documentation done ourselves. But he said, no, no, that's the rule. You have to pay this brokerage every year till the time you're living in this house.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of a tipping point. I felt that this is crazy because one, it's a huge amount of money. Uh, Service is bad. The only role that he did was connecting me to the owner, and all the discussion I had was with the owner directly after that.
Right.
For that, I had paid, you know, for an 11-month contract, 1 month rent from my side, 1 month rent the owner paid. So that's like 18% intermediation fee, which is highest in any industry, in any place of the world you can think of, right?
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's the time that I booked this domain name NoBroker.in,
Hmm.
because I felt that millions of people like me would be facing this day in and day out, and we need to solve for that.
Right.
So this was 2007, 2008. And then, of course, I was busy with my first venture. But I think 2013 is when I started speaking to Akhil. Akhil is my junior from IIT Bombay. We used to live in the same hostel. He was my next door neighbor. And
Right.
I told him about this idea because he was a techie guy. He used to work with Oracle and used to work at some startups earlier. So,
Okay.
so I told him that we need to build this platform because it's such a big pain, and this is the right
Mm-hmm.
time because now people are doing things online, people are buying things online, people are selling things online. So now, there's much more awareness about that. And so Akhil and I started building this platform and building the product and seeing what we can do there. And that's when I met Amit. Amit is my third co-founder. So
Right.
he was batchmate at IIM Ahmedabad, same dorm, same floor. So sometimes people think it's a cooked up story. Ki ek founder is next door neighbor at IIT, another one is a next door neighbor at IIM. So Amit had called me because he also, he was quitting his job. He was working at PwC and wanted to join some startup. So I asked him that, why
Right.
don't you join us? We're doing this and we
Right.
want to do this startup. And he immediately agreed because he had seen similar pain points in other places. He was in Calcutta earlier. He had faced similar problems. He was in Bangalore where, he went to a broker and he said that I'm looking for a home. So immediately broker called up an owner and said that, we have found a great tenant. We know him very well. He's a completely vegetarian guy and all that. And Amit is a non-vegetarian. So he showed up to that house. And after that, every time the owner is coming to the house, he had to hide his eggs and meat and all that. So,
Oh my
so we
God.
realized that, there's so much information asymmetry. The broker is just interested in closing the deal.
Yeah.
So Amit also joined, and that's how No Broker started. Uh, we struggled a lot because when we started, we initially bootstrapped. We launched it in March 2014, and then we wanted to raise money because you know uh, it's a consumer startup. You need money to scale it up. You need to advertise. You need to make people aware about what we're doing. But I think it was a big struggle. Nobody wanted to give money to us because everybody said that nothing like this exists in the US or
Hmm.
China or anywhere in the world. So why will this work? It was very hard to convince people that structurally it's very different because
Right.
US
Right.
market is regulated market. The brokers undergo a training, they do a certification, and so I think that was quite a bit of struggle for almost a year, where we couldn't find an investor. And I think somehow uh, we were able to finally convince two or three people that that you should invest in the company. It's a great team, great market, very large market. And I clearly remember that we were about to get term sheets from three investors when uh, next day the front page news was that housing has raised $90 million from SoftBank,
Right.
and suddenly, all the investors vanished. Everybody felt it's too risky because it's a winner takes all market, and somebody having $90 million in the bank is a big deal, of course.
Hmm.
And
Hmm. Hmm,
at
hmm.
that time, right, we were looking
Right.
at raising, 1, 2, 3 million and housing and $90 million in the bank. So it was of course a big deal, and it was a shocker for us also because we never believed that somebody can raise so much money so early in this market. But I think we fundamentally believe that what we are doing is uh, is something very transforming because uh, all the other platforms were advertising platforms for brokers, but the only the pain point was not that. The pain point was that the quality of the entire transaction and the cost was very high. Nobody was trying to solve for that. So even when housing had raised so much money, I remember there was a time when we bootstrapping had higher number of listings than what housing had. So
Wow.
that was a kind of pull which we could see that people fundamentally believed that what we're doing is right, and they wanted a solution. There was a latent demand for that. People didn't want to pay such a high amount of money. People didn't want to have that poor experience of information asymmetry, too much pushing, and all that. I think people wanted to take the decision when at their own speed and then decide. So I think we finally were able to raise money after some time, and we raised $3 million because I think in a startup journey the most important thing is that 100 people may say no, but you need just one person to say yes. So we needed one investor to come in and say yes, and Elevation Capital came in, uh, and that's how we started.
Nice. I think there are a few interesting points over there to touch upon. Obviously, I'm quite happy that you brought up the US market as a juxtaposition to the India market. Uh, some of the listeners may know already, we actually interviewed a realtor from the USA in the tri state area. And you're absolutely right when you say they are a significantly more regulated market than India is. In fact, when you started NoBroker in 2014, there wasn't even RERA to regulate transactions by developers.
Yeah,
No sort of streamlined database for people to be registered as brokers. In the US, you have to pay
Right.
a fees, you have to take a test, you have to be you have to take an exam to sort of pass and get a license. You need to be qualified enough to know the legal parameters that govern. There are laws that actually govern how you can conduct yourself as a broker, which doesn't exist in India. So it's a significantly different market.
Right.
If before we sort of dive into the further details, in a nutshell, if you could like encapsulate for us what if you were pitching, or you were sharing with them exactly what the value prop is, because I think your story really highlights it. But in a nutshell, either to investor or to a potential customer, how would you describe the no broker value prop?
so NoBroker is world's largest platform that connects owners, tenants, buyers, and sellers directly without any broker, without any middleman. And we are now one-stop shop. Whatever you
Hmm.
need to do in your real estate journey, you can do at NoBroker itself. For example, if you're a seller or if you're an owner who want to sell or rent out his house, you can get the painting done, you can get the renovation done at NoBroker before you list it on the platform.
Right.
And you can speak to the buyers and tenants directly. Pose that as a tenant, if you find a home and you have to do a legal documentation, you can do it at NoBroker. You can do packers and movers through us. You can do cleaning services through us. You
Wow.
can do
Okay.
mortgage through us, interior. So basically, a one-stop shop.
Right.
Everything without paying any brokerage.
Right. That's fantastic. Thank you.
So now that we've kind of understood the genesis of No Broker as a company and the value proposition, I wanted to focus in on something that you were talking about, which was information asymmetry, right? The idea of providing transparent and complete information to your customer, the same information that the seller has as well. So now that this entire ecosystem has been set up and is a little more mature, given that there is this transparency of information, are there any insights that you've gotten from consumer behavior from them using your services and being able to access all the information about a property that they're looking at? What insights has Snowbroker gleaned from consumer behavior recently?
So yeah, I think so many people interact on the platform. I think we have almost 16 million active users on the platform every month. We do around 60,000 rental transactions, around 6,500 buy sell transactions every month. So we get a lot of data and insights, which we basically use a lot of algorithms and heuristics to, to convert them into useful information for the tenants, buyers, and owners also.
Right.
So the entire thing which probably a broker does with the help of heuristics, right? For example, if you're looking for a property in say Bandra West, and you say, okay, my budget is 60,000 rupees for a 2 BHK,
Hmm.
broker intuitively will say, okay, this will not get here. You'll have to move to Santa Cruz or
Right.
maybe
Right.
Andheri. We do a lot of those things with the help of algorithms and without any biases, right? Because broker only tell about places which he has, and because he or she has a limited inventory, so they'll try and
Right.
bias that. So I think that's one point of how we use a lot of data. But coming to insights, I think two, three things which are very which we've seen in the last 3-4 years shaping up. One, people are looking for bigger houses.
Right.
That's we've seen a change happening that now people are saying that we want slightly bigger houses and we want houses with amenities and gated societies. So we
Hmm.
see that the demand for gated societies has surpassed a lot from a non-gated independent buildings and independent houses. So
Right.
it's multiple times growth as compared to what a non-gated place has seen. Because I think people are saying
Hmm.
that we want a clubhouse, we want a swimming pool, we want amenities to play sports and all. And I think probably COVID-19 also helped people move
Right.
towards a little more aligned towards fitness, people understanding that gated communities are better suited because you have basic infra in place. You don't have to go outside for all those things. Uh, even I think the bigger houses is partly and something which came from COVID only, that people said
Hmm.
that sometimes they have to work from home, so they need a workplace which is required. So I think that's one big trend which we are seeing. Uh, in short term, what we're also seeing is that people are preferring to stay closer to work. So that is
Right.
something which is coming as a trend, which was obviously reversed during COVID-19. People are saying, okay, we want to, we want just bigger houses, lower rents, but we can, or lower prices, but we can stay away from work also because we didn't have to travel. I think right now we are seeing that that it's a complete reversal. People are saying we want to stay closer. Could also be one of the reasons that a lot of infra development is happening in all the major cities of India. So you go to Bombay, metro construction is happening. You come to Bangalore, so all the roads are jammed. The traffic is really poor. So I think that's one of the reasons. But I feel that what we're also seeing is that some of the suburbs are also developing in a meaningful way. And in the
Right.
Right.
in the long run, once all this infra is up and running, I think people would want to look at those places also. Right now, we see a lot of investors coming in those areas and investing in
Right.
properties. But I think that's going to change because uh, the central markets are saturated. They're more expensive now. While suburbs are able to give a much better quality of life, and if infra is there, and if you just have to travel for 30 minutes, people would prefer to stay there.
Hmm.
I think third, of course, it's been talked about a lot, but rental inflation that's very
Hmm.
high in India right now, and multiple reasons for that. During COVID, the construction came to a standstill, so the supply didn't come. The demand was came in a huge lump because as soon as the offices opened, people wanted to come back to cities. While during COVID, they had all gone to their hometowns or living in places like Goa and Shimla and working from there.
Right.
Now everybody is coming back to Bangalore and Pune and Bombay. So I think rental inflation is very, very high. And our guess is that it will stay high for some time till the time that the supply starts coming in.
Right.
And I
Right.
think, and fourth trend, which I think is very predominant, is that there are a lot of buyers in the market now. So Indian real estate, if you look at from say 2013 to 2020, was very muted in terms of buyers being in the market. It didn't grow. Multiple reasons, RERA, GST, demonetization, multiple things happened which disrupted it. But I think what has happened is now there are multiple buyers, and especially millennials who always shied away from owning a big asset like houses and said that they will always rent. They are now coming to the market and seeing a huge demand. And I think typically we've also seen that a buyer looks at EMI to income ratio. And since the incomes have increased a lot, all the interest rates are also very high. But I think
Hmm. Hmm.
people always look at that ratio and say that, okay, what can I do? And and given that the rental yields are also very high right now, because in places like Bangalore, some places you can get rental yields as high as 5%, 6%. So people are doing that calculation that how much rent do I pay, and if I make a down payment of 20%, then how much EMI do I have to pay, and start comparing that. And since that is a very narrow gap, we are seeing multiple buyers. So we are clearly in an upcycle of real estate after an 8, 9 years flattish market. We are in an upcycle which we believe will last for the next at least 5, 6 years. So it's a great place to be in a real estate business right now.
That is good to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick follow up before we build further into our conversation. Again, feel free to answer as briefly as you need to. But since you at No Broker are uniquely positioned to get such interesting insights, I wanted to ask you, since the time you started till date, has there been any unique insight that has either surprised you, or something that you didn't expect that has come out of being in this position?
When we started, we fundamentally believed that we need to solve for transaction, because that's where
Right.
the major gap is, right? That how can we
Hmm.
connect the two parties directly and help them do the transaction. But
Right.
when we started developing the product, when we started doing transactions more and more, and I think the best thing about our company is we are a very customer focused company. So we speak to a lot of customers on a regular basis.
Hmm.
Everybody in the company speaks to customers. And one insight which we got from them is that, look, transaction is okay, and you're great, you're helping us do that, but the entire value chain is broken. So
Right.
I'm able to find a home, but how will I get my legal documentation done? How will I do my packers and movers? Because if you look at this entire industry is highly unorganized in India. There is
Right.
no organized player to help you do moving, or to help you paint your home, help to do your repairs. So all those things are completely unorganized. The only
Right.
way for a customer to find a solution is that they can ask their friends and family if somebody can refer, or otherwise they'll go to Yellow Pages or Google, do a basic search and find out, without understanding how the person will finally deliver the final
Yeah.
output.
Hmm. Hmm, hmm.
So, and there is no quality guarantee. You can get a painter from Google, but you don't know how he's going to do it, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
there is nobody who's saying, okay, I know that they'll be able to do a consistent job of it. We realized that this is also a very, very big pain point for the customer, and makes a lot of sense for us, because anyway, the acquisition cost is zero. We know when the customer has done the
Mhm.
transaction. We just have to
Hmm.
move him to the next stage in the life cycle, and it's a huge revenue potential for the customer. He or she doesn't have to run to five places: one place to get a painting done, one place to get a cleaning done, another place to get a packers and movers, another place for documentation. They can just come to one place and do everything at that one
Right.
place. So
Right.
that
Right.
that made a lot of sense. And obviously the market size of this is very, very large. I
Hmm.
mean, the brokerage itself is very large in India. So
Yeah. Yeah.
almost,
Yeah.
I'm not even sure, if you want to guess it, how much do you think would be the brokerage paid in India every year? Any guess?
I
Eh,
think our resident
the fig-
MBA should take the guesstimate.
no, no. I'm living in the States, so I'm struggling with the conversion between dollars and rupees.
You can tell me in
Oh
dollars. I
God.
can I can convert it.
No, no,
But any
I
guess in
do.
which?
I genuinely don't think I can give you a rupee figure or dollar figure guesstimate, but I do recall, Yash, I forget who it was on the show, mentioned that it's something like 70 or 80% of all sales in the market are broker driven sales, at least
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
primary market.
Yeah, I
yes,
think
yes,
Mr. Sunil Mishra from Anarok Respect. He
Yeah,
had
yeah,
yeah,
mentioned it
he
to
had
us. Yeah.
mentioned to us. Yeah.
yeah.
But
So I think the
obviously, I
brokerage.
would say people should go listen to the episode, listen to his. I might not recall if it's exactly 70 or 80%, so don't quote me on that. But it's up there. It's somewhere up there.
No,
It's
no, it's,
very
it's
high.
around that. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
it's similar as rentals and resale, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and the total value of that is around $20 billion every year.
Wow.
$20 billion
Wow.
is paid as brokerage every year in India. So
Yeah,
it's a
sorry, I
huge,
want to
huge
make sure
amount of
I heard
money.
that correctly. Was it million or billion with a B?
Billion. It's 1,50,000 crores, one lakh
Oh
sixty
Wow.
my
thousand
God.
crores roughly. Yeah,
Perfect.
Wow.
I mean, I think that also flows quite perfectly into something that we had on our mind. circling back to the start of this conversation, you mentioned, and obviously now based on what you said, the need to become a one stop shop, or what the kind of more trendy term these days is a full stack service provider in prop tech, however you'd like to frame it. Like you said, if you start looking at this process through the value chain, from identification or property search to post sale services or moving and packing and stuff like that. So now that we know the thought process behind why no broker chose to get into these verticals, I wanted to ask you, once you made that decision, how do you choose which verticals to enter in this whole process and value chain, and what's the sort of cost benefit analysis of what you can actually provide at a good marginal cost versus what the which may be something a lot which may be something effort intensive but not great for you to enter, that the customer might need.
So I think there are two criteria for doing that. One, of course, the customer pain point. So we look at what are things where customer is struggling a lot, industries which are really unorganized, the quality is poor, consistency is not there, and the pain point is very large. So that is one big criteria. And second, of course, we look at the capital allocation, where it makes sense to get higher return on capital allocation. I think both of these are extremely important. If we are not able to make money out of that service, but the customer pain point is very high, then we figure out, is there some other way we can solve for that? Can we bring in somebody else who can solve for things like that? And some things, for example, it doesn't make sense for us to do it ourselves.
Right, right.
Things like, for example, mortgage. There is no way that we can provide mortgage, but we can
Hmm.
help people choose the right mortgage. So we partner with, say, 40 or 50 banks plus NBFCs, and we built an algorithm to say, okay, this is Yash, and he or she, his profile matches best to this bank and NBFC, and that's where he'll get the best, whatever his preferences are. His preference might be lowest rate, his preference might be fastest dispersal or highest amount of dispersal. So we do that matchmaking based on the algorithm and does that thing. Uh, but in some places, like where we believe that it is something which we need to solve, we pick it up. For example, in interiors, we realize that designing is a big issue, and when
Right,
people go to players, then they're not able to get good design. So we have designers in house, although the final execution of the work is outsourced. So we work with all the partners in all these services, where the final execution is done by the partners, but we have a very stringent policy to choose the partners, to bring them on
hmm.
board. And obviously we keep on monitoring their performance. We make sure that the NPS is monitored, and wherever we are getting bad feedback, we churn out those partners. So because no broker is guaranteeing that there'll be a consistent delivery which will
Right.
happen, and
Right.
you'll
Right.
get some everything at what you expected.
Right. No, absolutely. I think that really solves a big problem that we've just discussed so in depth in this conversation so far in the market today. Thinking about what you said earlier about everything sort of being aggregated on the platform NoBroker. Obviously, NoBroker is a tech-driven platform. One of the things that we were curious to know is, do you feel like the tech-driven platform and the structure that currently exists for NoBroker is something that you think will work for both the primary and secondary sale markets? And just to explain for listeners who may not be familiar with the exact terminology, primary means a developer comes in, they've built the building today, and they're selling apartments to the market themselves. And secondary home market is if, for example, Yash goes and buys that apartment, and then 2 years later he wants to sell that becomes the secondary home market.
Yeah, I think it does, because users or buyers typically are agnostic to new versus resale. It's something which should meet their requirement. So they would
Hmm.
actually want to look at both and then decide what they want to buy. So we see that many people, for example, start their search with saying that, okay, I want to buy a new house, but I want something which is ready to move in, and at certain price expectation. But then they realize that in area which they're looking, ready to move in property is not available. And I think
Right,
right now, if you look at it, that the supply of ready to move in property is very less, because we have absorbed a lot of ready to move in property in the last 2 years. So
Right.
so that is not available, and then maybe the price criteria is not being met. So then they start looking at resale, and they find that what they're looking for, they're getting probably better at a resale. And
right,
sometimes
Hmm.
opposite happens. They start with a resale, but they realize that what they're looking for in terms of amenities, in terms of what facilities they require, it's not available in the resale property, and they move to a new property which might be 6 months down the line for possession or 1 year down the line for possession. So I think
Right.
both. So customers keep on shuttling between these two, and that's why it's important for the platform to offer both these services, and we
Right.
do offer both. Uh, I mean, in India, if you look at primary versus resale is 40/60. So 40%
Hmm.
of sales happen in the primary market, 60% happens in the resale market. In a mature market like the US, it is actually 10/90. So 10%
Right.
is new sale and 90%
Right.
is resale.
Yeah.
So of course it makes sense, and we do large number of transactions in both primary and resale. Primary needs a little more hand holding as compared to resale because in most of the cases the property is not there, right? It's
Hmm.
still a development which is happening. It's still a plan in many cases. It's just a launch in a large number of cases. So somebody needs you need to speak to somebody and then be assured that what is happening. So we have a relationship manager who handholds the person in the primary and helps them understand the pros and cons of each project and then connect them to the builder after that. In
Right.
resale, it's easier because you can see what you're buying, right? The
Hmm.
property is there. So you just visit the property and then you can make a decision. So primary is slightly more complex, but we sell roughly uh, 500 crores of primary properties every month.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. That's really cool.
Sort of a short follow up that I had here, since we were talking about prop tech and the sort of tech stack here that no broker has to help the consumer. So you mentioned algorithms to help you find a property. You mentioned algorithms for the mortgage compatibility side of things. So I wanted to ask you, are there any other kind of unique tech interventions that you've used within this tech stack that you'd like to tell us about?
Yeah, so I think what you've done is that try to think from the customer's viewpoint, right, and see how we can solve for that. And I think that's an advantage of being an outsider
Hmm.
because you don't have an insider perspective. So always think like what a customer would be thinking. So,
Right.
so just think of it that as a customer, if you're trying to rent or buy a property, I think first thing which you struggle with is which is the right place to buy.
Right.
And we've tried to build that. Okay, so what we have is that you can go to NoBroker and say, okay, this is where my office is, this is where my wife's office is, this is where my children's school is, and then it will give you, and this is what my budget is, and then it will give you the best places where you can actually find the property in your budget. So kind
Hmm.
of a best place to stay kind of thing. Second, once you have identified kind of locality where you want to live in, you want to know what is the right price for this property or right rent for this property. So we
Right.
have
Right.
that algorithm where we can show you that okay, this price should be in this range. Is this price, is this property currently overpriced or is asking for a higher rent than what should be? So that rentometer is available then, and this priceometer is available. We also show what are the last transactions which has happened in this particular
Right.
property.
Right.
We're able to show that, for example, in the same building, somebody has bought a 2 BHK at this price 2 months back or three
Hmm.
months back.
Hmm. Hmm.
Those
Hmm.
data is available. So basically, bringing all the transparency. You don't have to guess now. You don't have to, you don't have to speak to anybody to say, कि, अच्छा, ये सही price is this right price, is wrong price. You just know because all the information, all the data is available at your fingertips.
Hmm.
And similarly, we're able to show, for example, that how many people have already contacted on the property, how
Right.
many people are viewing this property. So all that is now available. There is no information asymmetry. A broker can't come and tell you, sir, this property already 10 people are speaking to, so it will go very soon, so you should close it quickly because you can see that only one person is contacted and you
Right.
can make the decision accordingly. So basically whatever transparency you need to make the decision, that data is available now at your fingertips.
That's fantastic. And sort of now, just thinking about the trajectory, going forward, building on what we've discussed so far, when we talk about a concept like No Broker, a one-stop shop built with transparency, built with direct information to the consumer, do you feel that for where India's real estate market is moving, in the direction it's moving towards, that the direct to consumer model that you have in No Broker will be a parallel option for consumers? I think earlier on you touched upon that when we had the housing.com example, you said At that point, investors thought it was a winner take all situation. Do you still feel like it's a winner take all situation with the sales market and the brokerage market here, or do you feel it's a sort of multi homing where buyers will have multiple options and no broker will be probably one of the direct to consumer rather will be one of the more uh, preferred options for consumers?
So look, even today, consumer have two options. Either they can do a transaction through no broker, or they can do a transaction through a broker.
Hmm.
Now that broker they can find through either Google search, or they can go to other platforms like 99 Acres Magic Bricks, find a broker through that, or housing and find a broker through that. Or they can just walk across the street and there are multiple brokers, there are multiple broker shops. You can just go and speak to them. So there are only two options for consumer. I mean, having said that, between these two options, uh, I think there is a kind of migration happening from offline to online.
Hmm.
And people want that they shouldn't be paying such a huge intermediation fee. So that is
Mm-hmm.
something which is a natural process which is happening. So I really feel that if the if the if the offline brokers do not innovate, if they don't become online, they do not offer online services, they do not reduce the amount of money that they are charging, I think it's very difficult for them to survive. But any broker who is doing a great service, who is solving customer problem, who is technology using technology to reach large number of audience so that the transaction happens much faster, and who is not charging that huge amount of money, that person should coexist.
Hmm.
So
Right.
that's how I think of it.
Right.
It's a question about how they innovate and they do that. There is no
Understood.
reason for a person who is solving the service and not charging exorbitant price to coexist with us.
Perfect. I think before we wrap, there's just one short follow up that I wanted to ask you, Saurabh. You had mentioned rent inflation as a trend that we saw last year, and I just wanted to ask: do you see that trend continuing? Because, like you said, rental supply is something that is probably going to take a while to resolve itself.
Yeah.
So, what do you see as the future for rent
So
inflation?
look, rentals have increased a lot now. I don't see any reason why rents will go down because supply is still constrained. Uh, and whatever supply now is coming, it's being absorbed very fast from end users. Of course, there are investors in the market, but I think there are a lot of end users in the market. So whatever new launches are coming in, that supply is getting absorbed, and people will probably shift to those houses to live for themselves.
Hmm.
So I don't see that the prices will come down. I think, but what will happen is that the prices are already high. So the rental yields are in the range of 5-6% in places like Bangalore. In Bombay, where rental yield used to be 1.5%, has gone up to 2.5-3% in places. So it's obviously very very high now. So I don't see that it will keep on increasing with the same inflation rate, but rents will remain high. Uh, but in the next 1 year, I think because a lot of offices are still yet to open, a lot of employees are yet to come back, I think inflation will remain high. Post that, when the supply starts trickling in and the demand stops coming into the cities as much as they're coming now, I think it will go back to the normal inflation rate of 5 to 8, 10%, what we were seeing in the past years.
Perfect. So I think that brings us to the end of our conversation and the end of the questions that we had for you, Saurabh. From both Akshay and I just wanted to say thank you for taking out the time to join us at Concrete Conversations. And I also wanted to say congratulations because NoBroker has recently become India's first Proptech Unicorn.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great occasion for all of us working in Indian real estate as well to see unicorns coming out of this industry.
Yeah.
So thank you again for your time. And we are really happy that our listeners could get all this information from you today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yash. Thanks, Akshay. It was great speaking to both of you.
Thank you for listening to Concrete Conversations, the Indian real estate podcast.
We're excited to announce that we're now in video format on YouTube.
For highlights from our episodes, check us out on Instagram.
And as always, stay tuned for more concrete conversations.